We'll just give about 30 seconds for those queued up to come on in, and then we'll jump into it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for The Art of Following Up a Customer webinar. This one has been incredibly popular. We've had a lot of people talking about this, and I personally am ready to take notes. We'll start with an acknowledgement of country. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we work, live, and meet today. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and we celebrate the stories, culture, and traditions of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities who also work and live on this land. So thank you for joining us, those that are here live and those that are going to be watching the replay later on. I'm Mikala. I'm a small business facilitator with Business South, and we basically help people think, plan, launch, and grow their small businesses. So we live right in the startup space when you're thinking about getting a business idea up and happening, or even just bouncing around your idea. If you want to have a chat with someone to know if it's actually got some legs. So we have with us today the awesome Mr. Adam Bird, who is a coach, a mentor, an author, and a sales legend, and that's my wording, not his, and also a very dear friend of Business South. So Adam's run a few workshops and webinars for us, and they're always absolutely fantastic, chocked full of information, and all of it is applicable and doable and super effective. So welcome, Adam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you for putting me right up there. Can I go down now? Okay. And thank you to everyone. Thank you, Sharon, as well. And thank you to everyone online today. I understand in business that time is so precious and it is your most valuable asset. So just to give you a little bit of a background from myself, I'm actually based here in Tassie as well. And about 4 years ago, I set my business up. Fantastic move 2 weeks before COVID. So it was a very scary move for me. And the workshops that I try and do with the clients that I work with are based on what you can do today that will cost you nothing. So I do want to talk a little bit about the AI revolution that's coming out at the end, but today's workshop will basically go through some real key points for yourself. And if we go through what they'll be, it'll be pretty well following up a customer and some of the do's and the don'ts, and some of the little techniques that I've picked up from other businesses that have also been affected. So in today's little workshop that we'll be going through how to regain control after a client leaves. It's just some of the techniques that you can use there. Techniques for telephone and texting. Yes, you can tell by my age group, I didn't grow up with texting, but now I'm starting to see the importance of it, especially with a younger generation. Creating confidence in the follow-up process. And there is a confidence building mechanism that you do need because you've lost a little bit of the control process. Texting, emails that can be utilized. So what I've done here in this workshop is I've actually put some templates there. I stress to make them your own, but you can use the templates to way. And I've given all this to Business South as well. So you'll be getting everything you see today. You'll be getting some reference notes from today's session. Using combinations, I'm really finding now that it's a double approach whenever I'm doing a follow-up with my clients, and I'm finding it a lot more effective. Being creative, and I've got some templates today that I'm going to show you how I've been creative. You've got to be very careful when you're being creative that you have your own personality come through and effectively show and shine your personality. And then a little bit of understanding the right time and right placement. I've got a great sales graph here I've pinched it from Salesforce that shows you the best times on when to actually engage with your clients as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stay on afterwards. Please feel free to have a chat with me then and bounce off. And also, I've got my contact details with the team at Business South. I genuinely mean it. I think that one of the problems that we all have in small business when we're first starting off is kind of like, who do you talk to about different issues? I'm here for the team to basically bounce off and pick up the phone, have a chat to me. Always happy to share. I always start off with a bit of a problem because that's what we've got today as a solution to the problem. And unfortunately, in the era of someone leaving your premises and not buying your product, you've now lost a little bit of the sales process control. And the three parts of that control is the control of your sales pace. When a customer's in front of you, or if you're on basically a telephone talking to your customer, depending on how you structure your business, you're controlling a little bit of that sales pace. The control of the live negotiation, again, that customer has now left your premises, so you don't have that face-to-face interaction. And then the control of where your customer is. Now that customer is out and about shopping, and in the world of Google, they can literally be shopping anywhere at fingertips. So in this session, we're just going to explore some of the solutions that can bring that control back. The very first thing I do when I work with my businesses, and Carla said it before, and Sharon will also say it, I actually work with about 10 businesses doing this style of work. So I'm on ground zero with them. And the very first thing I ask the businesses I work for is get to know how your customer wants to be followed up. Now, you might find that's real basic 101 selling, but you'll be shocked if you've got a young salesperson working with you or a young sales consultant working with you, that they have failed to ask the customer that's on your premises how they want to be followed up if that person's leaving without purchasing. So the very first thing, are they an email style of customer? Do they prefer the phone, or do they prefer a text? And don't be scared of using FaceTime and Zoom, and I'll explain that towards the end of this session. I'm starting to do a lot of Zooms now with my clients who like that face-to-face approach. Nowhere near as good as a live, but certainly is better than sometimes just a telephone call. So rule number one, if I was dealing with anyone in the sales arena, I tell them to basically make sure that they do follow up. You will be shocked how many young salespeople or how many seasoned salespeople I come across that they're just basically trying to avoid the follow-up for a couple of reasons. One, they're scared about the negativity and they're scared about the rejection. But if you've got people following up on your behalf of your business, or you're following up, give yourself a dedicated time that you're definitely going to do it. Don't just let it drag on for 2 or 3 days and then find out later that that customer has actually drifted off and bought somewhere else, with the sad reflection they could have bought it from you with a bit more knowledge. You see, one of the things that does happen in the world that I do tend to work with, which is automotive, finance, insurance, and small business, is sometimes people just like to go away to have a ponder about possibly is that going to fit into their world. They might not have asked every question that you kind of like should have been asking at the time. So that qualification part is sometimes in that follow-up phone call as well. A couple of key points here with a follow-up. The first thing is make sure you plan your call. Don't just pick up the phone and say, I'm going to go ring up that customer back. Make sure that you have a solution to a possible problem that they were talking to you about, or make sure you customize it as well. Also, when you're talking to that customer, trying to build that experience up again. You know, one of the things I learned very early in my sales career, and I'm coming towards the end of it, was that I learned that not everyone's going to buy off you, which is common. But what I did learn is everyone can still refer you. So in other words, in our sales ratio in our industry, we tend to have 4 people come in, 1 person buys. But that doesn't stop the other 3 people wishing they bought from you, and the other 3 people still basically referring you, or what I call a living business card. So it is the time now that you've got to focus on that client, walk away from any distractions that you have in your shop, any distractions you have in your business, and just dedicate yourself to that one phone call. You need to sit there and plan that call and tick off the things that you need to actually address within that telephone call. And understand too that you're going to have a time allowance within that call as well. So what is the best time to call? That's probably the most questions I get asked the most. And this was a fantastic sales graph that I found a few years ago. And I'm starting to really adhere to it, even in my own business. Statistically, Wednesday is the best time for follow-ups. Now, you can't wait until Wednesday if your client came in on a Saturday, but you can see there that Friday is actually the worst day of the week to follow up a client. But if you do look here, you can actually see that we've got a statistically higher chance of actually following up a client around 10 to 11 or in the afternoon. There's a little bit of science here. If you think about it, when people first come in the morning, the last thing they want to do is have a follow-up phone call. Or they could be dropping children off to school, or they could be getting ready for their day. That 10 to 11 time, they tend to be available more for a telephone call or more for a follow-up. They also will review their emails as well, because they come straight in the morning and do the necessary ones for their business. Then they start to review emails for people chasing them for business. I do not try and ever ring anyone around lunchtime, because it's either two things can happen. One, it could be they're rostered for lunch, therefore they're covering for someone else. And two, the last thing they want to talk about is business when they're having their lunch. I do find that 4 to 5 period for me has been the most successful. And if you do know the client and you know that they're traveling on the way home, sometimes giving them a call just after 5 is a great way to connect. The reason why is they're driving home, and if they got hands free, they'll actually have a good conversation with you in the car. I find this well with like the top end of the management people that I deal with. Not so much the mums and dads. They tend to like it before the 5 o'clock period. So moving along, we'll just clear this, and we'll just clear that. Excuse me for a sec. We'll just wipe these little red things out. Okay. Sorry about this, everyone. We've just had a little bit of a jam on my computer screen. It must be down here at Brim Creek that we're a bit slow on the internet today, or I'm a bit slow, one or the other. So just bear with me. Carla, can you just see if it's actually working your end? Is it coming through okay?
Yep.
Sorry, okay. Sorry, everyone. I froze down here in downtown Brim Creek, so I apologise. The first golden rule I love to do, even for myself, is place yourself in a position for your follow-up. And both Sharon and Michaela will know that with every email I do, with every text, I always actually say, I will follow you up, rather than let the customer dictate when they're going to follow up. I put it down to that old rule that we used to have in the movies. Don't call us, we'll call you. That means you'll never be in the movie. So 80% of all business on follow-up calls could be after the second one. So don't get discouraged for one follow-up call. Always at least look at the second or the third, but nominate the time that not only suits the customer, but also suits you. So whether in a texting or if you're going in an email, I would actually say to that customer, I'll give you a call later between 3 or 4 o'clock and see what their response is. The reason I do that is I want to make sure that I'm in control of the time period so that I can maximize that telephone call with the client, as well as the client not being relied on to actually give me a call. It's a lot different way of looking at it. With busy people, I found the next level up. So you've got a busy person that you're dealing with that just keeps fogging you off and pushing you away. Then the best way of actually doing a follow-up phone call is lock them in a time using your calendar invites. So I deal with a lot of CEOs, a lot of CFOs that just don't have the time for telephone calls off the cuff. So what I will then do is plan a call with them. Usually it's via text, believe it or not. I'll text them first. They'll give me a time period back between that and that. I will then instantly send them a calendar invite to lock it in. I take it a step further too, and this is one thing I'll stress to all of you online today and the people who will be listening to the webinar later. Try and take the time to personalize it just a step more. So whenever I'm actually sending a calendar invite, not only do I do the description, I'll also do a little snippet of some of the information that we'll be talking about that day. And the reason I do that is it just gives it a nice little touch. And you can also find as well that that person, when they log in to have another look at it, they have a visual representation of what they'll be talking about that day. I'm a very visual person, and I tend to find that the more that you can have that come through in a follow up, the more powerful it is. So, with busy people again, use your calendar invites. Now, I'll tell you the power of a calendar invite. You now have a working PA, because not only do you now have that locked into their calendar, but 15 minutes before the calendar or the telephone message or the telephone hookup is ready to go, this will be sent out to that person. So, like today, 13 minutes before the other follow up, I get that flashed up. Now, sometimes I'll actually get a small text message from that person saying I'm going to be running 5 minutes late. Is that okay? Which tells me straight away that we're locking in the time. There's another little technique I picked up recently. If you want to have a telephone call with a busy person at dead on 11, there's a good chance that he's either on a Zoom or she's on a Zoom or possibly a meeting. Try and make it just after the hour rather than on the hour. So I try and make my follow up telephone calls at 11:15 or 12:15 or 3:15, which just gives them a little bit of time allowance to go past it on the hour. Can't stress enough to make it unique. So you've got to turn the light bulb back on for me again. So don't just be boring in your emails back to the customer. Think outside the box and think about some of the things that interested them when they come in and had a look at your product, come and had a look at your service, and reignite that interest. Don't try and sell back to them though, because that's already been done. You're now just giving them some points that they can actually review with either their partner or themselves, and just get them to effectively see that your value proposition. Again, you can see a couple of like themes starting to come through in this presentation. I just can't stress that you can't kind of like be lazy in this. It seems very easy just to pick up the phone or do a quick email and tick off that you followed that customer up. But I want you to think about this. We're all in business together here. It costs you dollars and hundreds of dollars to get that customer to come on your premises in the first place. So you've already spent and invested time with that customer. So now you're reinvesting what you've already basically done. So what do I mean by that? If you work out what it costs you per year to open your business up, and then divide that by the customers that you see, that is basically what it costs you per customer to even come onto your premises. Now, that customer's already had the experience of dealing with you, so why not invest more heavily when you do the follow up afterwards? Because you've already built rapport. And that's why I say you've really got to be unique and you've really got to re add that value proposition. There's a couple of techniques I can share with the team at Business South on how to do that. But the first golden rule is don't pitch to me again. If you haven't secured the sale in the first interaction, or that customer comes back in again by their own merits, then there's no use trying to resell them or repricing them until you actually talk to them again. So, and the other thing too is stick away from being that little bit of desperation where you say, have you got any more questions? Or, feel free to ask. Well, of course they can feel free to ask. They're your client. But what you can do is make any comments that they made in your presentation of your product and start to see if you can look at it a bit differently and how differently you can actually help that person and mention it back in your communication, especially with an email. So some key points that they liked about the service or some key points they liked about the product, and then see if you can add to those which they didn't mention, because that might be the one part that's holding them back from actually transacting today. Now, I'm going to put my hand on heart. If you'd spoken to me 10 years ago and said to me about texting, I would have actually turned around and said, I don't believe in it. I believe in what I call the human transactional value. I recently was a guest speaker at a fairly large convention in Sydney, and they brought me along because they said Adam deals in what we call affectionately a trench trainer. So I get right back down, talk to customers with the businesses that I work with, get to know them, get to know the business. However, there is a lot more of this interaction where we're looking at the world of texters. And I cannot stress enough that you've still got to do what you basically do with all your other communication. So even though you've got texting and even though it's sending you, you've got to ask the question, why are you sending this text? Now, if we've been in business and we've gone to any meeting, we've all seen this photograph here or this action here. A text comes in, and psychologically, a human being has got to look who's texting them. They'll have one eye down unless that phone has been banned from that meeting. So it could be a result of human behavior that they want to see who it is, which is a fantastic touch point for yourself, which means that you get an opportunity, but don't waste that opportunity. Really structure the text as if you want that follow up. So the big word with texting is intrigue. You need to intrigue me back to basically want to then do more communication with you. Now, recently I had a young lady that was sending texts out to the customers, and unfortunately she was just using her name and saying, call me. That's very clever. It's caused intrigue. It also caused probably a marital distress as well at home. So just be very careful that you're up against a lot of spam. Make sure that you're saying who you are. Make sure you're representing your business at the same time as well. Here's a statistic to have a think about. If you have a look at the best form of communication is definitely two-way. And the reason I say it's two-way is because any other medium, even if it comes to the telephone, we start to lose that face-to-face interaction. We can't really see the body language. But with a telephone call, you still get your tone, your pitch, and your conversation. And apologies, one of the things that I sometimes have to kill myself about is that I do tend to speak very fast. So if I'm speaking too fast today, Michaela and Sharon, you got to let me know, okay? Because I get a little bit excited, as you know. So, but here's some stats here that I think really speak for themselves. It's more likely than any other communication for someone to have a look at a text message. 79% of clients check their phones within 15 minutes of waking up. And SMS response times are around 90 seconds compared to 90 minutes for an email. The other problem that you have about emails as well is emails will get lost in the transactions of a day. I spoke to Michaela before everyone jumped on, and even myself this morning had close to about 40 to 50 emails to troll through. So I'm prioritizing those emails as I'm going through them, and then I'll get to some of the emails this afternoon. Whereas with text message, I'm looking at the text message on a minute by minute basis. So as it's coming through, I'll quickly have a look if I'm not busy doing something like this now. So if SMSs are potentially an excellent way to open the lines of communication, you need to vitally structure them for the maximum effect. So here is a couple of different ways of doing it. You can do what I call a two-punch method. So I use text messages to effectively follow up something. So if I have a situation where they're wanting more information, I want to give them a call, I'll actually structure a text message just saying, I'll call you later. Here's some bullet points that we spoke about today. Or I will use it as a follow-up with my emails. So if I send an email out to the customer, I know they're not going to probably read it for a few hours. I will actually send a text message out effectively saying that. And also with a voice message. Now, some people leave voice messages, some people don't. I actually implore you to leave a voice message if you can, but then send a text message saying you've left the voice message. I know in my own heart that they probably won't listen to a voice message, but the fact is that you've then created the communication again via that text. You have an excuse then to follow the customer up because you will actually nominate a time to follow them up. So with the email again, once you've sent an email, send a text just saying, look, I've actually sent you an email. It covers all the things we spoke about today, plus the information that you needed. And I'll give you a call this afternoon when it's convenient to you to effectively do a follow-up phone call. The reason I'm doing that is that they might look at the email when you talk to them in the afternoon, and then you basically have sent them the notes of that conversation. And then you can also make sure that if the customer's left and that customer hasn't transacted and you just want to send them a courtesy SMS just saying thank you for joining us today, feel free to do it. You might even want to then create a bit of a link to your business or a link to some of your social media, which we'll talk about in a minute. So don't just send a text that goes, hello, are you convenient for a talk? Start to be creative with your texts as well. So a couple of bullet points here that we've done before with some of our clients is think about a picture with the text. So a lot of the clients I'm actually dealing with now are sending a picture and some of the text as well. Input a video if you can of your product or a product link with your video. Use a link to your businesses, bringing them back into that area, or a product review or Google review. One of the insurance companies I'm working heavily at the moment pretty well sends a product review each time they actually respond back to a customer, because that puts them back into the area that says other people are saying how wonderful they are, seeing that they're running at about a 4.7. So it double backs up some of the conversation that they've had that day. Also, a link to maybe your business video, if you've got it on YouTube, or any external media link. Now, that's not saying every time, but if you're engaging with a client and you want that client to kind of like come back and basically have a little bit more time with you, and you've maybe spent that time that you know that they're getting close to that purchase, then I'd be definitely doing a bit more of this rather than just a blank text. Michaela and Sharon, do we have any questions that have come through at this stage? That's a drink break for Adam.
Not so far, but if anyone does have a question, please feel free to pop it in the Q&A box. But also at the end, once Adam's finished, if anyone is feeling brave enough to jump on and actually ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand. So when this finishes, I'll get Adam to ask people to raise their hand if they've got a question and want to jump on and say it. And you can ask them then. But if you think of something in the meantime that you don't want to forget, feel free to pop it in the Q&A box and we will answer those for you, or Adam will answer those for you at the end.
I'll do my best anyhow. So, and I always say to my clients as well, just remember, you're not the only one trying to chase their business. So, again, I go back to that point I made about how much it costs a client to come onto your premises in the first place. And now that the client's left, you definitely want to invest as much as possible. I love using emails as a follow-up tool. And one of the things I've learned over the years, and I must thank a young guy called Cruz in Melbourne, he showed me how to do this with a great effect on following up clients. It's all about the subject. You have to make me look at the subject. Now, if I looked at my emails this morning, I'm scanning first which ones are going to be of interest to me, and I'm deleting ones as quickly as possible then to filter out for the day, for me then to get back to ones which are important. So don't be lazy in your subject material. Make sure that, again, you're using things that will draw my intrigue in. One of the tips that I've learned, or techniques I learned from this young guy, was he templates a lot of his signatures to have a lot of content as well. So you can actually save yourself from time, have one for customer information, one to say follow up a customer, a Tassie email, which I use for my Tasmanian clients, a thank you customer, and then you can just put a couple of little nice, subtle little bits to make it personalized for yourself. But again, you've then got them templated rather than you having to do a new email each time. I do believe in personalizing it though. Don't use just templates and send it out. Customers can read through that very quickly. So for me, when I'm using the subject, and I think people who are online at the moment will gather, I'm a bit of a quirky type of person. I tend to inject some of my humor and a bit of my personality into the subject for my customers to actually get the meaning for it and to draw them into the email. So exciting new update. And then I put this one hot off the press. So Friday session. And then I did this one, Adam touching base as promised. So I'm actually following up a client there as promised. And then this one here, at PSTS last November day left. That particular email, I received a text message within 5 minutes from that email with the client saying, I'll take that day. So again, they're scanning and they're looking at the content. This one up here, exciting new update. I had Dhiramid ring me up a day later because it's probably not urgent in his mind to ring me up and say, well, can you just go through exactly what that means for our business and go through, is that a value add to your training that you're doing? This one hot off the press was because I have to send the material to that customer to let him have a quick look to make sure he's happy with that content. Again, he can now see that, and he jumped back and basically gave me a call and asked me to do some bits and pieces. So just make sure when you're doing these follow-up emails, make sure that the subject matter is the most important part of the email. Intrigue me enough to open it up and filter through all of the other emails that I'm getting throughout a day. One good way you can do that is refresh the customer on some of the points that you discussed. So whenever I'm actually sending an email to a prospective customer or working with some of the teams that I do, we'll put some bullet points in there of some of the things that we discussed that day, so that when I actually ring that customer back up to have that follow-up phone call, we can go through those discussion points as well. So it becomes a little bit of the list or a little bit of the planning of making that follow-up phone call. The other way you can do, which is a really nice way, and it depends on your business, is also send them relevant articles on what relates to your business. When I'm dealing with the automotive industry, they tend to do a follow-up phone call. If the customer has seen a car and knows that they go camping, they'll actually send them some ideas of where they can take that vehicle camping. Now, obviously, everyone, and I've been to some of the Business South people, and I've met from people who do lawns to meals and all sorts of different things. So you're going to have to work out what fits in for yourself. But even some pictures of what you've done with other people, or effectively, could you see yourself with this, or an article that relates to your product or service, is a really nice way of doing it. Do that even if the customer has left their email and didn't quite engage. It's still a nice way of doing a follow-up phone call for that client. Now, this is becoming a very debatable area, but we have to concede before COVID, none of us probably did Zooms. In fact, I can still remember a person saying to me 5 years ago that I should invest in Zoom. And I said, that's a waste of time because no one will use it. And that was a great financial decision on my behalf, considering the stock exchange at the time. It was selling for $6.90, and I think it's now $3.20 or something per share. So a genius decision by me. But let's have a look at this new modern day world that we live in. No one is scared anymore of electronic devices. You know, God rest my dad, he was 89 and he was on Zoom with me. So start to think about where you can inject Zoom or Teams into your world of follow-up with a client. Now, it's probably not going to be for the first time you follow that client up. This might be for a follow-up to do with business that you've just about got done, but you want some finer points discussed. Or if you're presenting something and the customer just wants to go through those points again, or you've got a brochure that you want that customer to go through it again, and possibly plans, anything that can be visual, it's a real powerful medium. So for me, again, you can see here, not only am I setting up my Zooms, but I also will send a little picture at the end of what the content is. Why is that? I would probably have 50% of the people that I actually send a Zoom invitation to will then forward it on to someone else in their company and ask if that person can join. That's a great follow-up tool, because what that's actually told me is maybe the other person is the decision maker and maybe they need to be invested in that decision. So not only do you then get the follow-up on a face-to-face basis, but you also get to meet more people within the business that you're trying to get. They say that 3 points of contact within a business tends to then gain full participation. So again, I use the Zoom as much as possible. I think if I remember the first time I met the team at Business South, Sharon and I actually share the Zoom telephone call. So it just shows you. One of the things that I say to my clients and is just be very aware of time and don't be pushy. You've just got to remember that you're going into someone's life, and I know how busy you are as a business person. So imagine you're being bombarded by everything, and now all of a sudden someone wants to come in and try and sell you something as well. So just keep that really laid back a little bit and don't become desperate with your potential client because they'll start to wonder why. I did some telephone techniques the other day with a couple of the younger sales teams that I work with, and you could tell that they were more desperate about trying to get the sale. And you could feel on the other end after listening to the tape recording, the client was starting to think, is there something going on here, or can I get more money off the product? So it only creates a discount if you're too desperate. So I love using this little image here with the dog thing. Is literally you've got to start to think to yourself that you're still on the front foot when you're doing a follow-up call and you're still confident. All that's happening here is the sale is proceeding at a different pace. The more confidence that you can inject with that follow-up call, the more confidence the customer will then be basically brought back into you and into your product or service that you're actually selling. But however, if you've followed up a client and the client has come to you and said, okay, yep, I'm happy to go ahead with it, there's 3 yeses that you'll get in sales. You'll get a commitment yes, which is exactly what you need. You'll get a counterfeit yes, and you'll get a confirmation yes. What's the 3 differences mean? A commitment yes does 1 or 2 things afterwards, which we'll go through. A counterfeit yes is just a customer saying yes to get you off the phone. Yep, that's no problems at all. Confirmation yes is a lazy yes from you. You've heard the yes, you've put down the phone, and then you talk to people within your business, and the first thing they're going to ask you is, if that's the case, how is that customer going to proceed, and when is that customer going to proceed? So if you've got a young person working with your business, or you're following up a client and you've picked up the phone and the client's basically said to you, yes, I'm happy to go ahead with it, we need to know is how we're going to go ahead with it, how much money are they going to put down if it's a deposit for a larger item, and when are they going to actually come in and pick it up. Without the how and the when, you've either got a counterfeit or you've got a confirmation, but you haven't got a commitment. And it's a shame because you've done all the hard work of a great follow-up. You've done all the hard work of re-engaging with that client. You've just not done the last bit to ensure that that client does go ahead and buy off you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about AI, and I'm assuming, and apologies if I'm wrong, that we're all in small business here. I'm a small businessman. I'm actually intrigued about where this will go. In my lifetime, I don't think that AI will be utilized by my business. But if you've got a business out there that does need to look at AI, start to have a look at the different ways that you can implement that. In the conference and the convention I went to, AI was becoming an instant success for following up behind a human being. So there's different platforms out there that you can utilize, platforms that effectively do the emailing on your behalf, platforms that basically do the telephone calling on your behalf. I stress I didn't see the value in AI for the initial follow-up. I could see the value in AI for following up old cold leads. So, and I could see how intuitive the AI sales tools are becoming. Very happy for me to take this off this today session, because the things I'm really looking at is things that we can do instantly together and for free. But if you've got a business that you're not quite sure AI can fit into it, I'm happy to share with you what I saw. One of the follow-up was so incredible. The lady asked some unique questions and the AI sales tool picked it up and even answered it back. So it's becoming very intuitive in its mechanism. Just a couple of key points. When I talked about following up, don't be lazy in your post sale. Now, I'm not sure the businesses there are online, or the businesses that will be looking at this later as a webinar, what type of following up you're doing with your client. But I want you to think about this. A referral is so powerful for businesses. I don't actually advertise per se. All of my business has been done by referrals. I heavily network in the likes of LinkedIn, and I basically build my referral network out that way. But I also am not lazy in my post sale. Here's a couple of things to think about. Have they provided feedback for you? If you go to my website, you'll see that I'm getting feedback and I post it on my website and I update that regularly as well. I also get permission if I can use the feedback for a potential new client, especially if they're in the same type of area, so that that client can see that I've dealt with their industry before. Can they share a like on Facebook or social media? I'm going to be fair here. Facebook for me is a private, but I also get obviously my LinkedIn, and I get a lot of my clients interact very heavily on LinkedIn. In fact, I sometimes use LinkedIn as a follow-up mechanism as well, especially if that client has come to me and talked to me a little bit, but not quite engaged. I'll send them a couple of articles through LinkedIn just to keep my face in front of them. How can you help promote their business? Massive one. So many times in our follow up, we're asking for business. But imagine if you can start networking your clients together between each other on how you can actually help them. It becomes a real prominent part in their life then, that they can see that you're working for them as much as you're trying to get more business out of them as well. Any benefits that they've forgotten. So bring them up and just basically ask them about any benefits. If it's to do with services, then it's slightly a little bit different in its genre. Let them know you're only a phone call away if they need anything. And effectively, here's some tips that I got recently from another client that we're dealing with. They have about 40 people working in their business. And these were some of the tips that they shared, which I thought I'd be share with you today. Be natural, be yourself. You've got to be that. Don't be scripted in a follow-up call. Ensure you're up to date and stay connected. If your client needs action through email, help me help you. Have that sense that I'm helping you by helping me help you. In effect, step me through the process. And make this a reference. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and have that empathy with your customer. Confidence in the second follow-up call is essential. Even though you've done one, don't think you don't have to do another. Sometimes, as I said there before, statistically up to 80% can take up to 2 telephone calls. Remembering to call them before they call you. So if you've actually said you're going to get back to that customer with some information and you haven't got back to that customer with information and they have to ring you, you've lost a lot of rapport with your client. Showing confidence in the call, it stores belief. Structure the time that maximizes the call for you. I've been talking all the way through this to position yourself to do the follow-up call, but make sure it's a time when you can walk away from your business, or you can be able to have that 10, 15 minutes to make those calls where you can't get disturbed. So you can have that genuine top quality part in for your clients as well. Just in summary, because I've looked down at the clock and I've seen that we've gone for 44 minutes, which is time flies when you're having fun, hopefully. In summary today, we talked a little bit about a method that the customer prefers. So find out as quickly as possible in the initial stages about that client. Are they an email type client? Are they a texting type client? Do they prefer a phone call? I can tell you now, hand on heart, about 80% of the clients I deal with are really kind of like gravitating towards texting as a point of follow-up. Make sure you do it and don't wait. If you saw behind me, and I can't show you, there's a whiteboard here, and I put up every day the people I'm been following up, how I'm going to follow up, and when I'm going to follow up. Be unique. You can tell by my emails I'm unique. You've got to make sure you inject your personality into those emails. Humans still buy into humans. We can have all this AI and we can have all this online transaction, but at the end of the day, a human being will still want to buy into another human being, especially when it comes to sales. Be considerate of their time. Prepare your call, email, and text. Take the time. What questions are you going to ask that client? What questions do you think the client might ask you? Was there any points when you were talking to that client or customer that wasn't quite a bit grey in their way? Do we need to clarify that? Do we need to put a little bit more information there? Make it stand out. Remember, I said before, use that effectively your subject in your emails, even your text messages. Make it stand out. Make me drawn to it. Make me want to see what else information that you've got. Think creative to make me look, and be natural and be yourself. Don't be desperate. You know, yes, you're trying to chase up business. The customer didn't buy there and then. In my working career, I've seen 3 types of selling methods. I've seen a method called tell-sell, where we told the person what to do, how to do it, when to do it. I then saw a guided sell, where we had all like these set questions that customers were kind of like basically asked. This is a modern generation. It's a mindset solution. We have a lot of people now that are highly educated. They do a lot of research. Sometimes they're just looking for you to provide the solution based on the research that they've actually done. And by doing that, it might not be the first time that they're going to be coming onto your premises to buy. So that's where we've got to create that fantastic value proposition. And more importantly, your human transactional value. I deal very heavily with Jayco caravans. And I can tell you, people who have Jayco caravans do not buy the first day they go in there. But you have to build the value of the product, effectively build the value of the proposition and the value of the person that's actually transacting. More importantly, I thank you so much for your most valuable asset, your time. I really hope that, you know, sometimes I'm worried putting this together for about the 45-minute mark, that there's so much content here that I could have gone over and I could break down. As I said, that I really genuinely mean, feel free to give me a call and contact, and I'm happy to share ideas. More importantly, I've sent everything to the team at Business South. I'm like you. I'm a small business holder. I know the struggles that we go through. I know the pressures that we're on. The only advantage that I get probably over some of the businesses here is I get to work with all sorts of businesses. So I get to pinch some really good techniques, which effectively then I can share to the people within the Business South family. So that's my website there. And being a little bit naughty, Sharon and Michaela, I'll give myself a little plug. Feel free to buy my book on the Amazon bestsellers to help my retirement with my beautiful wife. So there you go. Michaela and Sharon, did you want to add anything while we're here?
Thanks so much for that, Adam. That was awesome. I took quite a lot of notes, and it was good. There were a few things that you mentioned that Sharon and I have already started doing, or Sharon's probably been doing them for ages. She taught me, so it was really good hearing that. It's like, excellent advice. Thank you for all of that.
Excellent. And
so, does anyone have any questions? So you can pop it, as I said before, pop something in the Q&A box, or if you like, you can raise your hand and we can give you the floor and allow you to ask anything live. So we might just wait a few moments there. Shaz, is there anything that you wanted to add as well? She might be busy getting organised. Oh no, there she is.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. I was nodding and going, yep, he knows what he's talking about. He's done that before. He's helped people do that before, and it's certainly been my career for the last 20 odd years is you know, the power of the follow-up, and something that I learned at a very young age, at the age of 19. The fortune is in the follow-up, and so often we go to great lengths to deliver a course, to show up for a networking function, to prepare for a meeting. But the mistake that so many make, not knowing, because you know, if you don't know, you don't know, is the follow-up. It's after the fact. And, you know, that's the third part of what we do in business. And there's so many ways you do that, whether it's an email follow-up system, whether it is a phone call, whether it is a text message, but having some process and procedure that you follow and understanding who your customer is it is a field that really requires a lot of attention in small business, because you'll be constantly fishing unless you understand the tail end of that. And one of the most important parts in that is the follow-up. So I was just like celebrating and high-fiving left, right, and center throughout the presentation. So thank you so much, as always. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, and I look forward to hearing everyone else's feedback, and I'm sure that there will be a lot. Thanks, Adam.
No problems at all, Sharon. No problems at all, Michaela. So I'm happy to wait on for another 5-10 minutes for anyone, but after that.
Well, we don't seem to have any questions, so we might leave it there. But as Adam said, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with so much of the information that he shared. And if anyone has any questions, do feel free to reach out to Adam directly, or just hit reply to the follow-up email that you receive, and we can forward any questions on to Adam for you. I am just going to highlight that Sharon and I are about to jump in the car and travel up to Launceston, so we may be a little bit slow in responding, but you will hear from us by the middle of this week, if not earlier. So thank you, everyone, for coming along and listening. And Adam, thank you again so much for your time and expertise. We always value it, and it's always such a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, guys, ladies. Thank you, everyone on board, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.